Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to the Auckland Unitarian Church, a place that has been home to people like you for 116 years. Unlike many other churches, it doesn't have a creed. Instead, it has principles such as recognising the inherent worth of every person, justice, equity and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We hope that any visitors who are here will share some of these our goals and that we may share some of theirs. Welcome. For my opening words, I've chosen some very cynical words from the book of Ecclesiastes. And I've chosen that particular passage because it reflects the idea of my sermon, which is saying you can have too much religion, but you can also have too little. And that cynical thought was reflected also in these words from Ecclesiastes. Do not be too righteous, and do not act too wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Do not be too wicked, and do not be a fool. Why should you die before your time? It is good that you should take hold of one principle without letting go of the other. For the one who fears God shall succeed with both. It's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. It is better to let its bright light show where you stand, for its glow will melt the dark night like the coming of a new dawn, and hope will be born from that small flame in your hand. So to my sermon topic, you can have too much religion, but you can have too little. This is an idea that only hit me a few months ago as part of the campaign that I'm helping to organise about Bible in schools and trying to stop that and encourage teaching in schools about all religions. But as I was going through the evidence for that, I came to a very great surprise. Because there were two people who were giving evidence in our campaign who had exactly opposite views. And I hadn't noticed it because they both support our general goals. They both support that Bible in schools should stop. And they both believe there should be education about all religions in our primary schools. But they had entirely opposite ideas about when that should happen. And one of them said that schools should not teach about religion at primary school age because children at that stage are not old enough to make up their own minds about it. So this compulsory religious education would be appropriate, but not until high school, which is an idea that had not occurred to me. But then, and that was for the Jewish person who said this, and there was another Jewish person who said to me, schools should not be teaching about. No, let me get it right. Should be teaching kids about religion at primary school age because at that stage it's part of their core knowledge. It's things that everybody needs to know. But at high school age, they should then have the right to opt out of it. As they do for many other subjects. We teach all our children maths up till high school age, and then kids who are totally hopeless at maths can breathe a sigh of relief and drop it. And same for other subjects. English is a core subject, and we expect all our children to get a basic knowledge of English, but expect them to do that by the time they get to high school, so that after that there is some choice. So that surely applies to religion as well. Isn't there a case that if children are getting a general background of knowledge at at primary school, there's an argument that after that they don't need any more, and there's these two sides which I'd like to look at a bit closer. What was the case then for teaching children about all religions while they are still at primary school? Well, there were several Jewish people who said to me, it's important for children to learn about religions from the start, not because they're going to want to carry out these religions or debate them, but simply so they can understand their fellow classmates. If there are some Muslim children at their school and they stop for prayer in the middle of the school day, the other children have got a natural curiosity, why are they doing this? And so at this level, this woman said she was Jewish, and she said, but she wanted her children to learn about other religions, but she also wanted to have her children not in a Jewish school, but in a secular school, because she said it's a part of their education is mixing with children from other beliefs. So I must say I very strongly agree with her thinking on both those points. But another person who said that they did not want their children to learn about religion at school. One was a rabbi, and he said it's a mother's job to teach a child Judaism, and nobody else's. It should not be a school telling some person at school who's not a Jew telling them what Judaism is about. That cuts completely across the mother's own training of her children, and so that got me thinking again. And which one do you come down on? I slightly come to the other one, but then I thought, in our talking about education, there are really two levels of education, two different kinds of education. One is the sort of awareness of it as awareness of your society, and that is surely the kind which should be taking part right from the start. But the other is training in your own chosen religion, and that involves a lot more. That involves, obviously, if you're a Christian, it involves learning to pray. If you're a Unitarian, that's obviously we expect children are able to be given the first steps in being a Unitarian by taking part in worship here. But that is not something that you would impose on other people, that they must learn to actually take part in other religions. And one of the Muslim women who gave evidence in our campaign said it's most inappropriate for other people who are not Muslims to be taking part in Muslim prayers. She said it completely destroys the worship atmosphere because it should be taken part by people who believe in it. And she said she would feel very offended if her children were being taught Christian prayers and invited to take part of them while they were in primary school. So I think the issue becomes a little clearer when you look at these different kinds of religion. And I'm coming to the view that the general knowledge kind of being aware of your neighbours, that's the kind I think is appropriate for primary schools. But there is a case for opting out of religion altogether at high school. One thing that I noticed in reading these two people's evidence, all the examples they gave were about contemporary religion. So the Jewish woman who wants other people to learn about Jewish customs, she doesn't want them particularly to learn the Bible. She wants them to learn about Jewish customs, why Jews do the things they do, why they celebrate Hanukkah, why they have special food that they are not allowed to eat at certain times of the year. So they want them to know what Jews are doing now, not what Jews were doing 2,000 years ago. And one of the Muslim leaders said he would like schools to teach about Islam, but he didn't say they should be learning to read the Quran. He said he would like them to learn some of the school stories that Muslim people tell to their children, because Islam evidently has quite a folklore of entertaining stories. I recall Clay taking one or two of these for us that are quite appropriate for any people from any religion to take part in, because they're not saying you must be a Muslim, but they're just entertaining stories about your life's values. And I noticed that a number of atheists who criticise Islam focus on sayings in the Quran that are hostile to other religions. And part of me agrees with them. I started reading a version of a translation of the Quran a few months ago, and I got about a third of the way through it and was absolutely nauseated by it, because it was just full of condemnations and saying who is going to go to hell, who's not a Muslim. But should I throw Islam, reject it because it has those verses? Surely I should know instead what Muslims make of these passages before we start digging out the worst bits from our point of view. So that's one of the moderating factors, I think, is that it's modern religion that is the main thing that people should be learning about at school. The history comes into it, of course, as well. But we shouldn't be asking people to adopt first century Christianity or first century Judaism or 5th century when it was Islam. That's part of it, but it's more relevant to know what people of those religions are doing now. The case for among the reasons for leaving the subject till high school is particularly atheists that I know who say this. They are people who say we do need to learn about other religions, but we need to wait until people can think critically. And their reasoning is quite straightforward. They recognise that children can't be shielded from other religions forever, but they say the time for including it is not till high school, when children are able to make up their minds. But when you separate those two different kinds of religion, I think that argument doesn't carry so much weight. And in fact, in our discussions on the Secular Education Network, when we began in 2012, a very high proportion of atheists were saying keep it till high school. But as that discussion has been continuing and religious people have started taking part in it, an amazingly high proportion of atheists are agreeing and saying let it happen in primary school, when it's provided it is this neutral kind of belief. In fact, Tanya herself is my colleague in planning this. She, a couple of years ago, was one of those who said any teaching about religion should be put off to high school, and I made the case to her that even primary school kids need to know something about religion, and without making any song and dance about it, she has quietly come over the other side. One of the things that helped persuade her and me as well, because I didn't at first think it was that important for kids to learn about religion, but it was when I heard from these Jewish people, most of whom wanted religious studies to be done in school, I said, well, hang on, it's already legal. I studied the Ministry of Education website. There are heaps of religious materials for schools to teach their children. And so I wrote to the ministry and said, well, I get the impression from talking to the atheists that I know that religion is teaching about other religions is not done in schools, but here it is in this website of yours. Does this stuff actually get used? And to my amazement, the ministry wrote a reply saying, we don't know. And I did a double take. And they said the law does not allow it. The law leaves it up to individual schools, and so the ministry cannot monitor it or find out whether it actually happens or not. And later on, when I asked the ministry if they would help us find out which schools were taking Bible in schools classes, again they said we cannot get that information for you. We don't have it. We don't run the Bible in schools classes ourselves. We don't have any. I was using the Official Information Act, and the Act only lets, they pointed this out to me, but I already knew it. They said the Act only applies to information that you actually have in your possession. and the ministry didn't have any information in its possession about which schools had Bible in schools. And they can't go on a fishing expedition for information they don't have. So, and I was rather upset about this because I thought they did have the right, and I wrote and complained to the Ombudsman. And the Ombudsman confirmed that the ministry was right. They don't have any power to get information about schools. And they quoted to me a section of Education Act 1989 about the monitoring of schools. And so that was how that particular part of the Education Act has become part of our campaign. I said we want to change that law. We can't leave it to individual schools. In fact, there are part of the Education Act 89 says that the reason for making schools independent was so that they could reflect the culture of the parents. And of course, that has the horrific side effect that if the parents are predominantly Christian, that gives them a license to impose their Christianity on all the other people. So that law is really an unknown, a source of discrimination I didn't even realise about till we started studying them. So that's part of what our campaign is attacking. But another reason, another new factor which Tanya discovered about a year ago was that there is a law which says that children can opt out of religious studies if they object, if they have a religious objection to it. This is not the Education Act 1964, which lets parents opt their children out, but this part of Education Act 1989 says that the students themselves have a right to opt out. But to Tanya's horror, they don't have that right until they're 16 years old. And so you can see the logic of it. At 16, they're able to leave school, so school should not be compulsory for them, and so their conscience can have free rein once they're 16. But the same law says that children under 16 can be opted out if they have a religious objection, but only if their parents support them. So this, we feel that also is unfair, because many children, and I'd be one of them, have quite well thought out positions on religion from age 7, or I was about 7 when I became independent. Most atheists I met, a large number of them became atheists around that time. So it's surely something wrong with those children not having any right unless their parents do it for them. I did find in part of our studies that some children at about age 12 are starting to take control from their parents. We did several surveys, several visits to schools, and found that the schools had, the children had asked their parents to opt them out. This happened at Browns Bay School. And there were so many kids who effectively asked their parents to opt them out that they had to cancel Bible in schools. That the majority of the pupils twisted their parents' arms and got that right. So that's become another part of our campaign, is that children at any age should have the right to opt out if you can establish this is their considered opinion. So I think that's an important part. In fact, that is a part of religious freedom that the atheists had actually failed to notice, including me. They were all concerned, saying, I hate Bible in schools because my children are getting brainwashed. It didn't occur to them that they themselves might be brainwashing their kids to be atheists. It surely is not the parents' right to stop their children learning something. The parents obviously have a concern about it, but it should be primarily the children's right to be able to avoid studies they don't want and to drop religious programs if they go against their conscience. So that's the conclusion I've had. And now I think I should say that this has been, for me, a growing curve. I was not aware of all these issues when I first started leading this campaign. Only gradually, as new insights have come, have I started to incorporate them. And for instance, the law about children opting out, I didn't think about it until this year. So I can hardly blame it if some of you think I've still left bits out and still need to change it. And so I would hope that you might see me afterwards and tell me about these things. I was going to suggest we having open this for discussion now, but I think it's getting a little late in the morning. But I still would say that I would appreciate your contributions. My mind is not yet fixed on all the details. And also, our campaign is actually due to get started in a couple of weeks' time. We've filed our documents to the High Court. The Attorney General, who's our opponent, is about to file his. He's filed one bit, asked for a delay so we can change our case, which we've done. And so now he's got 20 days now to make his submissions, and then we are ready to go to court. And so I'm hoping that will happen in a couple of weeks' time. That we'll have they not go to court, but we'll have a conference which will set our court date. Hopefully that will happen the next month sometime. So I appreciate the support that many of you have shown to me in this issue, but I would stress that there is still it's still a lot of it is open. After the court case is hopefully won, there would still be negotiations. It would still have to go to Parliament to actually change the law. The court can only say these laws are faulty. It can't say what should take their place. And Parliament does that, and it will do so with input from people like yourselves. There will be a committee of the Education Committee, I presume, would start to draft a new law, and that would be open for public submissions. So that's important part of, and there may be issues which come up in that stage that had not even been thought of before. And I think that will include the fine detail of what age it should happen. I think the court is not going to make a firm decision on that, but we could influence it later on. May love inspire you, wisdom guide you, and peace surround you until we meet again.